Hi, thanks for tuning in and watching my video about the lunar eclipse, which is still now and for the upcoming week, even though it happened yesterday on the 3rd of March. And Mars is aspecting this full moon, so we can feel that it's a blood moon, because Mars is blood. And we can feel like there's a lot of anger at this full moon around us. Maybe we are feeling upset. Maybe we have to deal with people, who make our blood rush to our head. So I felt it myself, so that's why I'm doing this video a day after the eclipse. Because my Mercury is at 9 of Virgo, and I have my Venus there. My Mercury is at 8 and my Venus is at 9 of Virgo. Therefore, that means that I myself have been eclipsed. And so Venus rules my 6th house of work, and believe it or don't, that at the exact moment of the eclipse, this is when I couldn't believe it. I mean, I could believe it. So I thought this was going to happen at this eclipse, but it's quite amazing to see that it happened exactly at the time of the eclipse. When they... So, you can see in my chart that my Mercury is at 8 and my Venus is at 9. And and the South Node is also my Mercury in Virgo, so because and I did say that I dislike it for a long time and I just wanted to stop doing it. And then, like I said last time, when there is an eclipse, what is good about it is that it will help us to get unstuck from whatever we were fearful to let go of. So I'm feeling relieved, I'm feeling lighter, like I don't have enough. And I'm grateful for the eclipse, to have eclipsed out my real life experience of what the eclipse can do. And that's why, some people say, we have to be fearful of the eclipse, bad things will happen. But for me, I think, bad things, we can say it's a bad thing, but it's a bad thing because it was fated to be this way. Fated, for our highest good. For example, now, but it's better for my health, it's better for my spiritual life, it's better for my mind, and now I can focus on do what I really like to do, and do other things, and this toxic situation, and that's what the eclipse has done. And also the square that we had to Uranus few days, I think, before the eclipse, this was also part of breaking, cutting the job, because Mars is also a co-ruler of my 6th house of work. The 6th house is the work you do because you have to do it, because you have to pay your bills. It's not. And then Uranus is the modern ruler of my midheaven, which has also to do with our professional life. So it's worth sharing because this is a true experience that I just had recently. So otherwise, at the eclipse, even though a week after the eclipse, like now and for the upcoming week, it's highly recommended to lay low and, not try to instigate or just try to trigger a event, because events are already triggered. So it's like when we say, not to add like oil on the fire kind of thing. So it's good to just lay low for the upcoming week and just let event unfold as they are fated to unfold, because like I said in my previous video, when we are at the eclipse season, it's the only time where we have the least free will, where things are going to happen the way they are meant to happen, and we don't have much to say into it. So, let's just things unfold. And, if something bad happens, there is also a silver lining into it, like in my own story. But I'm happy now, to be honest with you. So I just wanted it to end. So I'm thankful to the universe for this. And yeah, I mean, for some people it might be hard that, everyone is different. Maybe, a relationship ended, something ended. But know that this eclipse is going to bring better things, over time. So yeah, it's not going to leave you for nothing. That's just like the season. That's just like the cycles of life. Something ends, and there is always something else that will come, sooner or later. So if you are like me and let's say you lost your job, and then you feel differently and you just feel depressed, know that something better will come. Just open your mind and see the bright side. Right. And at an eclipse, a full moon, because this is a full moon and because it's close to the north node and the south node, that's when there is an eclipse. So because there is the sun opposite the moon and the moon opposite the sun at every full moon and at every full moon lunar eclipse. So this is no different because the sun is because the moon is opposite the sun. Then this can mean that this is like a new chapter where we have to integrate two parts of ourselves, our heart and our soul. We have to integrate together what we want versus what we need, and our conscious and our unconscious, the future and the past. And we have to integrate also our willpower and our instinct. This is also about reflecting at this time on your core needs and identifying how you're feeling, your moods at this time. Because the ruler of this full moon eclipse is Mercury, and Mercury is now in Pisces, which I think I said in my previous video. And so Mercury is in Pisces, and we know that Mercury is in fall in Pisces and is retrograde, so that means that he's not really able to give us as much as it could give us in terms of clarity and, communications and contracts with other. A lot of things are confusing. So it's the good way to use this Mercury is to listen to your own instinct and your own tap into your own intuition when you try to make a decision, rather than looking for logic. Go where do whatever you feel like, what comes to your mind, what inspires you. And this is how Mercury is thinking. It's about, in Pisces, it's more about creativity, from dreaming, doing things like compassionate writing, journaling from the heart. And because it's trining Jupiter, who is in Cancer, and Jupiter in Cancer now is very powerful because it's like nearly standing still, nearly not moving, nearly stationary. So when a planet is not moving, then, its power is more felt, isn't it? For example, if someone is in front of you and they just stop in front of you and don't move, you feel their aura, you feel their energy, rather than if someone just walk past you quickly. So if you think about it this way, you can see why when a planet is slow or not moving, that planet is stronger. And so, Jupiter is powerful, and it's going to get even more powerful because soon, this month in March, at some point, I think on the 11th of March, Jupiter is going to turn direct And 15 of Cancer is also where it's said to be exalted. So if you, 15 of Cancer is where Jupiter is the most powerful, is the most able to bring us, some optimism, some abundance. And in Cancer, it's to do with self-nourishment, developing your own instinct. It's about your emotional life, your family, healing the past. And when there is now Mercury is retrograding, so it's going to go backwards, and it's going to talk harmoniously with Jupiter. So if that applies to you, that can also bring matters to do with mentors in your life or your teachers, and that's positive. Also, like someone from the past, maybe a past teacher, a past mentor, depending on what house Jupiter rules in your chart. So if you were a Gemini and then Jupiter is ruling your 7th house of relationships, then in this case, you could say a relationship from the past could come back, or you could hear from someone from the past, or an ancient business partner. If this was your 7th house, if Jupiter rules your 4th house, maybe you hear from a family member. It could be other things. It could also be a positive message about legal matters, about travel. So Mercury is going to backtrack, and Mercury already met with Jupiter once before, and that was, let me check, because Mercury is trining this Jupiter 3 times because it's retrograding. So we can see the first time there has been a communication between Mercury and Jupiter, a beneficial communication. Something that made you feel good emotionally because it's in water sign. Something more likely to do with your intimate life, your private life. That was on the 16th of February. Not surprising because it was soon after Valentine's Day. So it could have been some romance. Not necessarily this, but it could also have been this, because at that time Venus was also conjunct the North Node in Pisces. Venus was conjunct the North Node in Pisces, and this was on the 17th of February. So again, that was close to Valentine's Day. So what was I saying? That, so the Venus and the North Node, this was a time, because now we are trying to remember what happened back mid-February, when Mercury first trined with Jupiter. Because this, if you can remember what happened there, then you know what might happen next. So when Mercury trined with Jupiter, that was mid-February, about, I think I said the 15th of February. And then Venus was conjunct the North Node of Destiny. And Venus with the North Node at that time, for Valentine's Day, did amplify our desires. And some of us also, our social charisma was heightened at that time. And for memory, Venus with the North Node it has also to do with unconventional aesthetics. And at that time, we may have had, inspiration for our partnerships. So we had like inspired plans because it's in Pisces. You know, we had like these great dreams and ideals. We had ideals about how a partnerships could become, you know, what we wish it to be. And these impulses of love, of attaining the dream, they were amplified at that time. So that theme will return again into a different way, because now Mercury. So we talked about something around Valentine's Day, about like all that I just explained, and then we just had to go backward and just review it, you know, and be like, is this going to work out? Have we thought of the details? Is that a good idea? And it's more like, because it's in Pisces, the Mercury is retrograding. So we had like some second thought. We had to go back, kind of fix something. Think something that is ephemeral, something that cannot be touched. We had to review maybe some kind of spiritual pain, you know, that happened in the past. That could be, you know, we had to go over our hurt feelings, our old wounds. You know, maybe we thought this relationship was going to be like this and it was going to be so great. And, then we were like, well, maybe before this works out, we have to fix this. We have to talk about this. So this kind of thing. So this conversation, this review of the event from mid-February is coming back again on the 9th of March. And this time, if it's a love story, it could also be a financial issue, because we said Venus was involved. And if it's not financial, at the least, it could just be something within yourself, to do with how your own self-esteem, you know, how you value yourself. So either it was a relationship, maybe your finances, or something to do with yourself internally. Right, but this time Venus will have moved into Aries. So when Venus was in February in Pisces, she was building bridges for us to connect with other. In Pisces, Venus was, you know, she was more intuitive, she was more creative, she was very graceful. You know, Venus in Pisces, you can imagine like a ballerina. You see how they dance, and that's a good representation of like Venus in Pisces. With Venus in Pisces also, we are more likely to be forgiving to others and to ourselves. So then Venus will go into Aries on the 6th of March. So, yeah, and then she will meet, I think I'm not going to repeat because I said that in my previous video. So she will meet with Neptune, and then she will meet with Saturn. And overall, what we can say with the fact that few days after the eclipse, Venus is going to meet with Saturn, is that this is a sign that is telling us that there are going to be some relationships changes as a result of this eclipse. And on the optimistic side, something positive that we can say about Venus conjunct Saturn, because if you see the video part 1 of March that I've done last time, I already talked about Venus and Saturn. But on the positive side, you know, we can think that sometimes Venus can also soften Saturn. You know, she can make things a bit easier. in a relationship in the Aries area of your chart. But in my opinion, I don't really think so, because, you know, Venus is she's in detriment. She's not into a good place. In Aries, you know, she's nothing like when she was in Pisces. There, she's more likely to just want to do what pleases her. And so when we need Venus, you know, to see both people's side on a relationship and to cooperate and to, you know, what's the word? You know, we need to compromise. And when Venus is in Aries, she's not into compromise. You know, it does take Venus in Aries with a lot of wisdom. Doesn't mean that it can't happen. But, you know, on the lowest level, not lowest level, like most unconscious Venus in Aries, then she's more likely just going to do whatever she wants. And that's why Venus is not into a good place when she's in Aries, because, you know, that's not how we can do good relationships. If you want to do good relationship, healthy relationships, you have to do when Libra, the opposite of Aries, the sign that Venus rules, Libra, which is looking at both sides of the story, you know, and do things for you and for the other person so that you can connect. And so when Venus is going to be in Aries, you know, she's going to be like, all of us, more likely going to want to do what we want to do and think of ourselves first of all. So already with Neptune and Saturn in Aries, there is already this energy of people want to do whatever they have to do to win. And now Venus is coming into Aries, and that's going to accentuate this. So, so that's what I was saying there. And so on the positive, I was saying that soon after, on the 9th of March, so we're having the second Mercury Trine Jupiter. And so this is really good for your relationships. If you are a Gemini, if you are a Sagittarius, if you are a Virgo, and if you are a Pisces. This is really good for your relationship. I mean, this is good for your relationships. But obviously that's just a general, you know, overlook of the chart. But because, Mercury is going to connect with Jupiter. So it's you and your partner, you know. So, and if you're not into relationships, like romantic or committed relationships, it's your business partners. That's still good for business negotiations, for example. Or, so the 7th house is anyone else that you talk to. So it's good for your relationship overall. You can, you know, better get along with somebody else. But the final pass of Mercury over to Jupiter by the trine is the best one, because this is when both Jupiter and Mercury are going to be direct. And this is the 3rd time that they will meet. And we will have had 2 eclipses done. You know, so a lot would have happened. So the thing is that we can't, you know, sweep away the fact that Jupiter is powerful now, and Mercury is, you know, at least it will be direct, but it's still in Pisces, so it is what it is. But it's still good trine because there is what's called a reception. So Jupiter is lifting up Mercury. You know, they have a lot more affinity, as if it was another trine, because Jupiter is ruling Pisces, and the sign in which Mercury is, and this is why there is like a reception. It's like Mercury is welcome into Jupiter's home. Okay, so right, and that last conversation is going to be on the 3rd of April. So if you followed the date that I said before, when Mercury spoke to Jupiter the first time, then Mercury spoke to Jupiter the second time, and now on the 3rd of April, whatever the matter that you are thinking about in your head, then know that on the 3rd of April, you're going to have a final reply. You know, you're going to know what the deal is with that situation. You know, the conversation is done. And now we're having more clarity about it. Also, we can be optimistic at this eclipse on the 3rd of March and the upcoming week, and the outcome that is going to unfold over the next few months, because we know that an eclipse has a long-term, ripple effect. The thing that's good is that Jupiter, as I spoke about before, is trining the Sun, which is the Sun and Jupiter together, especially when they are conjunct together next to each other or into a positive aspect like a trine or a sextile, is one of the luckiest, most positive aspect in astrology. So Jupiter is trining the Sun, and the Sun is in Jupiter sign, so there is a reception, which is a second good thing. And Jupiter is also trining with Mercury at this eclipse, and is sextiling the moon in Virgo. So this is positive because, Jupiter is said to represent the good in the world. And so when Jupiter is aspecting an eclipse, which we know an eclipse can bring, negative event, tragic event, unfortunate event. Sometimes we can feel the darkness, in the world at that time. However, at this eclipse, evil will be destroyed because Jupiter is aspecting both the Sun and the Moon at this eclipse. And bonus is aspecting also Mercury. So there's a lot to be, optimistic about. Like I said earlier on, if something bad happened, you can count on the Jupiter. Look where you have Cancer in your chart, in this house of your chart. And look where you have Cancer in your own birth chart, right? And this is where you can see where you can look for help, where you can look for goodness, even if it doesn't come straight up at the day of the eclipse, maybe a few days after, the week after, still stay optimistic that if something bad happened in the following week, then a remedy, a solution, an helper, a benevolent person, something good will come to your rescue. And not only there is a Pisces stellium at this eclipse, we know that Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, and Pisces is about letting go. It's about a cycle, ending, completing. And so that's why it's worth noting that it's at 12 degrees, this full moon. The moon and the sun, they are both at 12 degrees. And the number 12 is also a Pisces degree. Therefore, there is a strong, emphasized Pisces ending energy at this eclipse. Because, yes, with the stellium, there is a stellium in Pisces, because we have the sun there, we have Mercury, we still have Venus, so, and also the North Node is there, and Mars is there. So this stellium in Pisces, this number 12, the lunar eclipse, all this means that we need to let go of being a control freak. Yeah, because the moon is obviously in Virgo with the south node. And Virgo, yeah, so we have to let go of being a control freak and to instead delegate our managing task to others instead. And know that there is a higher wisdom and a divine order. There is a divine plan orchestrated by the universe. This is what Pisces is showing us. It's a time to call to our own connection with nature and our spiritual guides to show us the right path forward. If we step away from self-criticism and also step away from criticism of others, and if we detach from worrying at the unknown, then we can relax to allow the answers within us to emerge. Because this eclipse is a karmic load release. It's an uncomfortable news that is now being revealed and is asking us to let go of being over-controlling of all the little details, that burdens us. And to understand that things aren't going to work out no matter how much we spend, our energy at planning, organizing every little details. If our bigger plan, our bigger vision doesn't have any specific, purpose, humanitarian purpose, if it doesn't involve a bigger cause than just ourselves, if it's not for the greater good. So whatever work we do now, we have to infuse, some inspiration into it, some love into it. And certain things that we try to brush under the carpet are now impossible to ignore. Whatever duties we kept doing out of habit has now become devoid of meaning. The anxiety and stress from what needs to be let go of is becoming too much to handle for much longer. This eclipse is the trigger to release what our narrow-mindedness has hanged on to for too long. So thank you for listening to this part 2, and I will come back with part 3, maybe tomorrow, maybe this weekend. Stay tuned, and you can always ask me a question and check my services below this video. I'm grateful for your time. Take care, and bye for now.